My wife and her mom used sign language to hide her affair during pregnancy. They thought I was clueless. But I waited until the delivery room, when I signed back perfectly. I understood everything you said. And in that moment, their whole act collapsed. Hey, Reddit, I never thought I'd be here, typing this out. But let's just say, I learned the hard way that sometimes the quietest people catch the loudest lies. My story isn't really about heartbreak. It's about clarity. About that moment when you finally stop pretending not to see what's been right in front of you all along. So buckle up, because this one starts with a pregnancy and ends somewhere you'd never expect. I always thought marriage was supposed to get easier once you made it past those first couple of years. 3 years in with Christa, I was starting to believe it. A steady job, a decent house, and now, finally, she was pregnant. We'd been trying for a while, and when she showed me that positive test, my knees actually went weak. I wasn't the kind of guy who cried, but man, I was close. Then, she said her mom was coming to stay. Christa's mom, Linda, worked at a deaf center in another state. She's hard of hearing herself, which would have been fine, except she's also one of those I know better than everyone types. You know the kind, the ones who can make a compliment sound like an insult. Christa was over the moon about having her there. I wasn't, but I played along. Because, first-time mom, hormones, nesting phase, pick your battles. When Linda arrived, she came in like she owned the place, hugged Christa, ignored me, then started signing about how small our house was. I caught that part easily. See, my grandma was deaf. She raised me part of the time, so I learned sign language young. Still fluent, but I never use it in public. People can be touchy about outsiders doing it wrong, and the last thing I wanted was to offend anyone. So I kept that skill to myself. Christa knew I'd had a deaf grandma, but she didn't know I could sign. The first couple of weeks went fine. They spent hours planning nursery themes, folding baby clothes, obsessing over car seats. I mostly stayed out of it, doing my dad-to-be duties, putting together furniture, pretending to understand why anyone needs 3 diaper bags. Then things started to feel off. It wasn't anything obvious at first, just the way they kept signing, even when they could talk. Whole conversations while I was right there in the room. If it was just about baby stuff, why the secrecy? Every time I walked in, the energy shifted. They'd stop mid-motion, smile too wide, and start talking again like nothing happened. I brushed it off, told myself maybe I was just being paranoid. Then one afternoon, while fixing a shelf in the living room, I heard their laughter from the kitchen. The kind of laugh that sounds guilty. The kind that says someone's enjoying a joke they don't want you to hear. The angle of the living room mirror gave me a perfect reflection of their hands. I wasn't even trying to sneak a look at first. I was lining up the screws, but my brain just recognized the shapes. Not his baby. I froze mid-turn of the screwdriver. The sound of metal scraping would fill the silence in my head. My heart started pounding so hard, it felt like it echoed in the room. Then Linda signed something else, quick and sharp. Carl. Christa laughed. I kept my body perfectly still, eyes locked on the mirror like it was a lifeline. My fingers tightened around the screwdriver, but I forced myself to stay calm. They had no idea I understood. If I reacted now, I'd blow my only advantage. So, I made my voice loud and casual. You guys want tea? Christa answered right away. Yeah, thanks, babe. Her tone was normal, chipper. Even the same tone she used when she'd ask me to rub her feet or pick up prenatal vitamins. I boiled the water, hands shaking slightly, and watched them continue in the kitchen. Slower now, more careful with their signs. Linda's movements got tighter, almost scolding. Christa's were defensive. Whatever they were saying, I couldn't see the rest. When I brought the tea in, both of them smiled too big, too fake. Christa rubbed her belly like she'd just remembered she was supposed to act like a glowing mom-to-be. We were just talking about baby names, she said. I smiled back. Oh yeah? Anyone's name come up? Christa glanced at her mom before answering. Not yet. Sure. After that day, I couldn't unsee it. Every small moment started to feel staged. They'd whisper and sign across the room, laugh at nothing, or go quiet the second I walked in. Linda would pat Christa's hand with this smug little smirk, like she knew something I didn't. At night, I'd lie next to Christa while she scrolled through her phone, pretending everything was fine. I'd watch her face lit by the glow of the screen, wondering how many lies she'd told me with those same hands I used to hold when we watched movies. For the next few days, I tried to catch them again, but they'd gotten more careful. So I started paying attention to the details. The timing of her texts, who she mentioned from work, how often she napped in the middle of the day. Every tiny inconsistency added up. And every time she smiled at me, I saw it a little clearer. I didn't know what hurt more, what I saw that day, or the fact that she could still look me dead in the eyes and act like nothing happened. That night, while she slept, I thought about my grandma and how she used to sign love to me before bed. Same language, same hands, but the meaning couldn't be further apart. I looked at my reflection in the garage window and whispered to myself, the language I learned to love someone is the same one showing me I'd been lied to. That thought stayed with me all night, looping through my head like a bad song you just can't shut off. I didn't sleep much. I just lay there beside Christa, watching her breathe, wondering how she could look so peaceful with that kind of secret sitting between us. By morning, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. That would be exactly what she expected. The emotional, clueless husband losing it. No. If I was going to burn this whole thing down, I wanted to be holding the match and the bucket of gas at the same time. The problem was, I only caught a few signs that day. Not his baby, Carl. That alone was enough to make my blood boil, but not enough to prove anything. I needed confirmation. I needed someone who could sign better than me. Someone I trusted completely. So I called my sister, Laura. She'd learned sign language right alongside me when we were kids, but she actually kept it up. She used to volunteer at deaf events, still fluent, sharper than I'd ever been. She could pick up the small, fast movements I might miss. When she answered, her voice came through sleepy. You okay? Yeah, I lied. Just need a favor. I told her Christa's mom was visiting, that they'd been signing constantly, and that it was starting to feel weird. I left out the not his baby part. Didn't want to sound paranoid before she saw anything for herself. Laura didn't hesitate. I'll come down this weekend. You'll owe me dinner. Deal. Friday evening came fast. Christa had no clue. Of course, I played it like a nice surprise. My sister visiting to celebrate the pregnancy. Christa acted thrilled, even hugged Laura at the door like she meant it. Her mom smiled politely and signed something like, "What a sweet sister," probably assuming Laura couldn't understand. Dinner was set up perfectly. Christa made pasta. Her mom did her usual supervising, and I poured drinks, pretending this was just a regular family evening. The moment we sat down, the show began. Christa and her mom started signing before the salad even hit the table. Fast, casual, but constant. I didn't even need to look at Laura to know she was catching every single movement. I just kept eating, cracking light jokes, keeping the air easy, like nothing in the world was wrong. At one point, Linda looked straight at me while signing something that made Christa laugh, so hard she had to cover her mouth. I smiled back, chewing slowly. What's the joke? Christa waved a hand. Nothing. Nothing. Mom just remembered something funny. Sure she did. The rest of dinner crawled by. Linda's hands moved nonstop, like a machine. Laura stayed quiet, nodding occasionally, pretending not to notice a thing. When dessert came out, Linda excused herself to make a phone call, and Christa followed her into the living room. The second they were gone, Laura leaned in. We need to talk later. Just that one sentence made my stomach twist. When Christa and her mom came back, Laura was a pro, calm, smiling, chatting about the baby, complimenting the food. You'd never guess she was sitting on a live grenade of information. I was proud of her for that. After dinner, Christa said she was tired and went to bed early. Her mom stayed up folding baby clothes in the guest room. Laura and I sat out on the porch with mugs of tea, pretending to just catch up. But she didn't waste time. If you had doubts, she said softly, then you're right. I felt it before she said the rest. They're talking about a guy named Carl, she continued, voice low. Your wife's mom said something like, make sure he never finds out. And Christa signed back, he won't. He's clueless. Then they laughed. For a second, I couldn't speak. The quiet between us felt heavy, almost sticky. Laura's eyes softened. I wish I was wrong, but I know what I saw. Her mom even used the sign for cheating. She told Christa she'd done it before too, but got caught once. Said she learned how to hide it better next time. That last part hit me harder than I expected. The cheating wasn't just Christa's idea. It was a family tradition. I leaned back in the chair, staring out at the yard. Everything looked normal, but my head felt like it was underwater. Laura reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. "You okay?" I let out a short laugh, dry, bitter. "Oh yeah, just finding out my wife and her mom are running a master class in betrayal. Totally fine." She smiled sadly. "You don't deserve this." "I know," I said, "but apparently that doesn't stop it from happening." We sat there for a long time in silence. She told me she'd stay the night, just in case I needed her. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what I even needed. Maybe a time machine. Maybe a different wife. When she went inside, I stayed out there alone. The house was dark, quiet. I stared at the windows, at the life I thought I understood, and thought about all the little moments that suddenly made sense. Christa's random mood swings, her sudden naps, her new obsession with keeping her phone face down. It wasn't just heartbreak anymore. It was humiliation. I felt like the punchline to a joke I never knew I was in. Before I went to bed, I looked at the half-assembled crib in the corner of the nursery. My hands had built it. My money paid for it. And yet, I couldn't even be sure the kid it was, for it was mine. I turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment. "I'm glad I wasn't crazy," I muttered. "But now I wish I was." That line echoed in my head for days. Once you know something that ugly, pretending life's normal becomes a full-time job. I kept my mouth shut, smiled when Christa talked about baby names, nodded when her mom gave advice, and quietly planned my next move. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. Her name was Maria Whitaker, and she sounded like the kind of woman who'd seen every type of domestic disaster. When I called, she didn't even flinch at my situation, just asked for names, dates, and payment. 2 days later, she called me back. Her voice was calm, professional, but I could hear that edge behind it. "You were right to reach out," she said. "Your wife was involved with a man named Carl Harper, former co-worker from her old center. He sent her $5,000 about 6 months ago." My hand tightened around the phone. "Why?" "Hard to say," Maria answered, "but the message history suggests guilt money. I pulled transaction screenshots and emails. It lines up with when she stopped going to her old job." I sat there at my desk, staring at the blank monitor. "Anything else?" Maria hesitated. "Yeah, there's another guy. Adam Cole. Local. Frequent texts, mostly at night. Flirty messages. Looks like something brewing." I leaned back in my chair and exhaled. So not only was I raising another man's kid, but she'd already lined up her next one. Efficient at least. "Keep digging," I said. Maria chuckled. "Oh, I plan to." That night, I watched Christa set up the baby bassinet in the corner of our room. She hummed under her breath, glowing like the poster child for maternal bliss. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with an email from Maria. Proof. Screenshots of payments, names, even timestamps. I scrolled through them slowly, like rereading a nightmare just to confirm it's real. The $5,000 deposit had gift in the memo line. What kind of gift costs $5,000? That's when the idea hit me. If Christa and her mom wanted to treat me like an ATM, I'd give them something to withdraw. The next day, I waited until Linda was sitting in the living room crocheting something hideous, and Christa was scrolling on her phone. I came home looking excited, holding a fake letter I typed up at work. "Honey," I called, walking in like a man who just hit the jackpot. "Guess what?" They both looked up. "My boss called me in today," I said, pausing dramatically, smiling. "Said with the baby coming and all the overtime I've been putting in." I let it hang for a moment. "He's giving me a $15,000 bonus and a title bump." Christa gasped and ran over to hug me. Linda clapped her hands and grinned. Then her fingers started moving fast. I kept my expression dumb and cheerful, pretending to look for my keys. but I saw every sign clearly. He's soft. Take advantage. Christa nodded slightly. Then Linda added another line that made my skin crawl. I did the same with Richard. Only stopped after I almost got caught. My stomach dropped. Linda finished her sentence with a big, showy celebration sign, the kind people use for weddings or winning the lottery. I tilted my head and played my part perfectly. Oh, I said lightly. She's happy, huh? Christa laughed awkwardly, the kind of laugh that tries too hard. Yeah, she's just proud of you, right? I said, smiling. Proud. Inside, I was memorizing every detail. Their faces, their timing, the smugness. That night, Christa was unusually sweet. She made dinner, rubbed my shoulders, asked how it felt to be the big guy at work now. Pretty good, I said, keeping my tone flat. She smiled and leaned in. I've been thinking, maybe I should quit my job at the new clinic. Focus on the baby. Be home more. Of course she did. I leaned back, pretending to think. Are you sure? That's a big step. I want to, she said. Besides, with your raise, we'll be fine. She kissed my cheek like she'd just convinced me of something romantic, instead of financial suicide. Okay, I said. If it makes you happy. She grinned, not realizing she'd just handed me all the proof I needed that money controlled her every move. The next morning, while she wrote her resignation email, I logged into our joint account. I took half of everything down to the cent and moved it into a new account only I could access. Not revenge, just survival. I stared at the screen as the confirmation message popped up. Transfer successful. In the background, Christa's voice carried from the living room. I did it, Mom. Sent the email. Linda signed something back. I couldn't see her hands from where I sat, but I didn't need to. I already knew the kind of advice she gave. Later that day, I caught them celebrating with takeout, acting like they just won a prize. Linda raised her hands mid-bite, signing something like, "Everything's falling into place." Yeah, sure. Just not the way they thought. I stepped out onto the porch, phone in hand, and texted Maria, "You were right. Every word. Now it's my turn." She replied within seconds. "Then let's make it count." I looked through the kitchen window and watched Christa laughing with her mom, totally oblivious. 2 generations of schemers teaching each other how to manipulate men. And they didn't even realize I was standing 10 feet away, watching the whole show. I smiled to myself, not out of happiness, but satisfaction. Her mom wasn't just helping. She was training her. They thought they were smarter than me. That was their biggest mistake. I spent the next few days making home upgrades. Christa called it my nesting phase. I called it installing justice. I told her I'd been reading about baby safety systems, that I wanted to make sure everything was secure before the baby came. She loved the idea, thought it made me look like some overprotective dad. Perfect cover. What I actually installed were 5 hidden cameras and 2 mics. Small, discreet, high-quality stuff from a friend who runs a home security company. 1 in the kitchen light fixture, 1 behind the TV, 1 in the hallway smoke detector, and 2 in the corners of the nursery and living room. The mics were wired near the air vents, so voices carried naturally. I let Christa see me set up the fake baby monitor cameras so she'd feel comfortable, thinking that was all there was. I even downloaded a monitoring app she could access, filled with harmless footage of empty rooms. Meanwhile, I had a separate private feed linked directly to my phone and laptop. Once it was all working, I tested it by pretending to leave for groceries, then sitting in my car outside. Within 10 minutes, Linda started signing to Christa about me being naive but useful. I almost laughed. 2 days later, I planted the next piece of bait. I came home from work looking fake tired, sighing dramatically as I sat on the couch. "Hey babe," I said, "my boss needs me to cover a training trip this week. 3 days downtown conference." Christa turned from her phone. "This week?" "Yeah," I said. "Wednesday through Friday. They're paying for the hotel, food, the whole thing. I'll be back by the weekend." Her mom looked up from her magazine, signed something quick, then smiled at me. "That's good," she said out loud. "You deserve it," Linda said with that sweet, practiced smile. I smiled back. "Thanks, Linda." You too will be fine without me. Christa kissed my cheek. Of course, babe. Go make that money. The moment she said it, I knew she'd already made plans. When Wednesday came, I packed a suitcase, just enough to make it believable. 2 shirts, a laptop, a folder of conference materials. I left at noon, kissed Christa goodbye, waved at her mom, and drove straight to a hotel 15 minutes away. By 12:45, I had my laptop open, coffee in hand, all the camera feeds running. At first, it was boring. They talked about groceries, baby names, some weird TV show. Linda napped on the couch. Christa spent an hour texting. Then, around 6 o'clock, things changed. Christa started signing faster, her hands sharp, excited. I caught Adam right away. Then, tonight. My jaw clenched. Linda frowned, signing something like, "Be careful. He might come back early." Christa smirked. "He's too dumb to notice." I laughed out loud in my hotel room. "You sure about that?" I muttered. By 8, she was cleaning up, humming while setting the table. Full plates, candles, like a dinner date. Linda disappeared into the guest room, pretending to give privacy. At 8:22, the doorbell rang. Adam. Mid-30s. Tall, gym type. The fake "I'm successful" beard. He carried a bag of takeout and a grin like he already owned the place. They hugged, then kissed. It wasn't a guilty little peck either. It was practiced, familiar. Like they'd done it before. Recently. He unpacked the food. She poured the drinks. They sat at my kitchen table laughing. She touched his arm. He brushed her hair, behind her ear. The kind of scene you'd see in a commercial for toothpaste or heartbreak. I hit record on all cameras and let it roll. Every second, every touch, every fake smile. Documented. I forwarded the footage straight to Blake, my lawyer, and Maria, the investigator. No explanations needed. Blake later told me the audio couldn't be used in court anyway. One-party consent laws were gray where we lived. So he'd stick to the texts, the money trail, and the video evidence instead. A few minutes later, Maria texted, "Got it. Keep recording. This is gold." Then Blake, "Do not confront. We'll handle this the right way." So I sat there, alone, in a cheap hotel room, watching my wife play house with another man. You'd think I'd be furious, punching walls, yelling, breaking things. But I wasn't. I just felt hollow, like someone turned off the sound inside me. Around 10, Adam left. Christa stood at the door, waved goodbye, locked it, then started signing to her mom again. "He has no idea," she said. Linda grinned. "I told you, men only see what you show them." I closed the laptop slowly, leaning back in my chair. The room felt colder than it really was. I thought about how much energy I'd wasted trying to be a good husband, fixing things, buying things, listening, supporting, all while she was signing lies a few feet away. When I finally lay down on that hotel bed, I didn't feel rage or sadness, just disbelief. Not because she cheated, but because she looked so damn happy doing it. She looked happier in my kitchen with him than she ever did with me. I didn't rage about it anymore. I was past that. I'd entered the stage of quiet, tactical anger, the kind that plans, not reacts. First step, talk to Blake, my lawyer. I met him the next morning at his office, running on 2 hours of sleep and half a soul. Blake was the kind of guy who wore calm like armor. He motioned for me to sit. "Let's start," he said. I slid a flash drive across the table. Everything's on there. Her and some guy named Adam. Also stuff with her mom. He plugged it in, watched a few seconds, and his face hardened immediately. "That's a lot." "Yeah," I said. "It gets worse. There's another guy, Carl. He's probably the real dad." Blake leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Okay, here's what we do. First, financial protection. Move everything out of shared accounts, which I assume you've already done." I nodded. "Took half." He gave a short approving nod. "Good. Keep exactly half. Don't drain it. Judges hate that. Looks fair. Stays clean." He smirked slightly. "Second, we file for a paternity test once the baby's born. Don't mention it now. Don't confront. The cleaner you play this, the stronger it looks in court." I nodded again. I liked this guy already. He understood that revenge wasn't about yelling. It was about timing. We went over paperwork, next steps, how to separate funds legally without raising suspicion. Before I left, Blake said something that stuck. Document everything, even the silence. Especially the silence. That line hit deeper than he probably realized. Back home, Christa was acting different, jumpy, checking her phone constantly, asking random questions like, "You trust me, right?" And, "You'd never keep secrets from me, would you?" I'd just smile. Of course not. She'd smile back, but her eyes didn't match. She knew something was off. Probably felt the shift in energy, but couldn't figure out what I knew, or how much. For the next week, I went back to normal life. Work, chores, dinners. I played the role of the dependable husband perfectly. Sometimes I'd even compliment her cooking, just to watch her squirm. I wanted her to second-guess herself every second she breathed. Then, one evening, Christa came into the kitchen, phone in hand, pretending to scroll. "My dad's coming to town next week," she said. "He wants to be here before the baby's born." That made me pause. Richard, the only person in that entire family I actually respected. Quiet, polite guy. Worked long hours, kept to himself. Always treated me with genuine kindness. I actually felt bad for him. He had no idea what kind of circus he'd married into. When Richard arrived, Christa and her mom picked him up from the airport. I was sitting on the porch when they came home. He got out of the car, smiled, and shook my hand. "How's my son-in-law holding up?" he said warmly. "Great," I lied. Christa was glowing, like she'd just won the lottery. Her mom looked smug as usual, probably assuming she'd raised a genius. That night, they all sat in the living room, talking about baby plans while I watched quietly from aside. Richard looked happy. Proud, even. It made my chest tighten. He didn't deserve this. The next morning, I told Christa I had errands to run. Then I texted Richard privately. "Coffee? Just us. Need to talk. It's important." He agreed without hesitation. We met at a quiet little cafe downtown, the kind where the lights are soft and the coffee's strong enough to keep you honest. I ordered 2 black coffees. No small talk. No filler. Once we sat down, I opened my laptop and turned it toward him. He looked confused at first, until the video started. Christa and Adam sitting at my kitchen table, laughing. Then kissing. Then her mom walking by, signing like it was the most normal thing in the world. Richard froze. He understood sign language. He didn't speak. Didn't blink much either. Just stared. When I switched the clip to the kitchen footage where her mom signed, he's soft. Take advantage. His eyes finally closed, like he couldn't watch anymore. I paused the video. The silence between us was heavy, thick with understanding. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I didn't want to be the one to show you this, but you deserve to know who they really are." He leaned back, rubbing his face with both hands. I had suspicions years ago," he muttered. "I thought maybe it was me. Maybe I wasn't enough for Linda. But to see this, and now Christa too," he shook his head, eyes down. "I always thought I raised her better than that." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. After a long pause, he looked up. "Thank you for telling me. Most people wouldn't. I'll handle my wife when the time's right." He sighed deeply. As for Christa, he trailed off. "You do what you need to do." I nodded. "I plan to." When we walked out of the cafe, he patted my shoulder. His hand trembled a bit. "You didn't deserve this," he said quietly. "None of it." For a second, I almost felt bad for showing him. But the truth needed to come out somewhere, and he was the only one who'd see it for what it was. Not gossip. Not revenge. Just honesty. That night, Christa noticed I was quieter than usual. She asked if something was wrong. I smiled. "No, just tired." She didn't buy it, but I didn't care. I sat in bed, laptop closed. The house quiet except for her mom snoring in the guest room. I thought about Richard. How calm he was, even after watching his whole world fall apart. I respected that. It wasn't weakness. It was control. And that's when it hit me. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's strategy. Christa's due date was closing in, and everyone around us acted like life was picture perfect. She even posted photos of us setting up the nursery, writing captions like, "So blessed to have such a loving husband." I almost laughed. Then one rainy night, around 2 a.m., it happened. I was half asleep when Christa shook me awake, clutching her belly. "It's time," she gasped. I didn't hesitate. "Okay, let's go." I grabbed the hospital bag, helped her into the car, and drove through empty streets under flashing traffic lights. She was breathing fast, holding her stomach, moaning through contractions. I stayed calm, one hand on the wheel, one on her shoulder, just focused on getting her there. When we arrived, nurses rushed her into the delivery room. They hooked her up to monitors, checked vitals, started prepping. Her mom showed up an hour later, half-dressed, still bossy. I stood back, hands in my pockets, watching it all unfold like a movie I already knew the ending to. Christa screamed, cried, crushed my hand through every contraction. I didn't flinch. I just told her to breathe, counting out loud while her mom signed things like, "Almost there," and "So strong." After a few long hours, there it was. A baby's cry. Loud, sharp, real. The nurse smiled, holding up a tiny red-faced boy. "Congratulations, Dad." I didn't react. My heart didn't even twitch. The word "Dad" didn't belong to me anymore. They cleaned him up, wrapped him in a blanket, and handed him to Christa. She looked exhausted but glowing, whispering, "He's perfect." Her mom stood beside her, signing "beautiful baby" through tears. I watched from a few feet away, arms crossed. I didn't feel hate, just distance. Like I was watching strangers play family in my house. A few minutes later, a nurse came over with a clipboard and a polite smile. "Sir, we just need you to sign the birth certificate when you're ready." That was the moment. I took the clipboard, looked at the blank line next to Father, then slowly placed it back on the tray. My voice was calm, steady. "I'll need a paternity test before I sign anything." Christa blinked, confused. "What?" I said. I repeated, still quiet, "I want a test before I sign." The nurse looked caught off guard. "Sir, that's perfectly fine. We can arrange that." I nodded. It was already filed. My lawyer had submitted paperwork to block the paternity acknowledgement until the test results came in. But Christa's voice cut through, shrill, panicked. "Why would you say that? He's your son." I didn't answer. I just looked at her. Then, at her mom. Linda started signing. Rapid, sharp, frantic movements. I caught every single word. "What's he doing? Don't let him act hurt. Make him stop." I didn't even blink. I just lifted my hands. And for the first time in months, I signed back. Perfectly. Fluently. Clearly. "I've understood everything you've said for months." Their faces froze like someone hit pause. Christa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her mom's hands dropped to her sides. Even the nurse stopped moving, her eyes bouncing between us like she'd walked into the middle of a foreign film without subtitles. The silence in that room was deafening. Christa finally stammered, "You understand sign?" I nodded once. "I always have." She stared at me, pale, trembling, like she just watched her house burn down. The nurse cleared her throat awkwardly. We can schedule the paternity test after you're both discharged. It's standard procedure." Christa's mom tried to speak, but her voice cracked halfway. She looked at her daughter, then at me, realizing for the first time that I hadn't been the fool in this story. I stepped back from the bed, adjusting my jacket. "I'll be outside." Christa called after me, her voice small, breaking. "Please don't do this right now." I turned once, met her eyes, and said flatly, "Right now is the only time that matters." Then I walked out. I sat in my car, watching the hospital lights flicker in the rain-soaked windows. My phone buzzed with a text from Blake. "Call me when it's done. We'll move forward immediately." I put the phone down and just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Nothing. I just sat there, staring out through the windshield, thinking about all the noise the last few months had brought, the fake affection, the lies, the whispers, the secrets wrapped up in sign language. And now, finally, there was nothing left. Just quiet. And for the first time in months, that silence actually felt peaceful. I kept that peace for 3 days straight. Didn't answer Christa's texts. Didn't visit the hospital again. Didn't explain myself to anyone. I just waited. Waited for the results. Blake handled everything from there, cold, efficient, precise, like a surgeon who'd done this 1,000 times before. The hospital released the baby's medical swab to an accredited lab the next morning, and Blake arranged a proper chain of custody buccal test for me that same day. Everything went straight through his office. Fast. Clean. No contact with Christa. The paternity test came back faster than I expected. He called me personally. 0%, he said flatly. 0. I repeated, even though I already knew. Not even a trace. You're in the clear. And there it was. The official confirmation that the baby I'd been preparing for, the one I'd built a nursery for, had nothing to do with me. Blake didn't waste a second. I'm filing the legal separation and paternity disestablishment today. You'll be free of any financial responsibility once it's approved. Keep your head down. Don't contact her until the paperwork is signed. Gladly, I said. The next day, my phone rang. Unknown number. It was Richard. His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. I confronted her, he said quietly. She didn't deny it. She admitted everything. So did Christa's mom. I didn't say a word. I filed for divorce this morning, he continued. 30 years of marriage down the drain, but I'd rather lose that than keep living in lies. I could hear him breathing hard, pacing. You did what I should have done years ago, face the truth. I kept pretending not to see the cracks because it was easier. I won't make that mistake again. I finally spoke. You don't owe me anything, Richard. He let out a short, humorless laugh. Maybe not, but I respect you more than I can say for my own family right now. 3 days later, Christa finally reached out. 21 missed calls, 12 texts, 2 voicemails. The last message just said, please, just meet me once. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Curiosity, maybe. Or closure. We met at a cafe downtown, the same one we used to go to after her doctor appointments. She looked exhausted. Makeup smeared, hair unwashed, hands shaking slightly. The second she saw me, she broke down crying. I don't even know where to start, she said. Start wherever you like, I said calmly. And she did, rambling for 5 straight minutes. Denial, blame, excuses, apologies. Every emotion on repeat. It was just one mistake. Then, you were distant. Followed by, I didn't know how to tell you. I let her talk until she ran out of words. Then I leaned forward. You cheated. You lied. And you let your mom coach you like it was some kind of sport. I knew everything, every conversation, every plan, every time you thought I was too dumb to notice. Her eyes widened. You saw everything? Everything, I said. And I didn't stop you because I wanted the truth. Not a confession. She covered her face, sobbing. I don't even love him. It meant nothing. Then I guess you lost everything for nothing, I said quietly. She reached for my hand, and I pulled it back. It's over, Christa. The baby's Carl's. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Her voice cracked. Please don't ruin my life. I looked her dead in the eyes. You already did that yourself. I stood up, dropped a few bills on the table for the coffee I didn't touch, and walked out without another word. On the way back to my car, I texted Maria, the investigator. Loop Carl Harper in through Blake. Tell him he needs to arrange his own test. She replied a few minutes later. Done. You're free. And just like that, I was. 2 months passed. The divorce paperwork was finalized. Uncontested summary, dissolution. No kids, no fight. Just signatures and silence. Christa moved out of state, apparently living with her mom again. Somewhere along the way, I stopped checking my phone for messages that would never come. I stopped replaying old footage in my head. I started sleeping again. Last week, I met Richard for coffee. He looked tired, but lighter. He told me his divorce was almost finalized, and that he'd started volunteering at a local animal shelter. He laughed when I joked that he'd replaced 2 loud women with 20 quiet cats. As we stood to leave, he shook my hand firmly and said, I'm proud of how you handled this, son. That word, son, hit harder than I expected. Christa used her hands to lie. I'm using mine to start over. And now, as the screen fades, the story leaves you with this. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube, this video deserves to blow up.